Hello and welcome to episode 55 of the world's first Paul Weller fan podcast. I'm Dan Jennings, and 10 years ago I gave up my live streaming career as a radio presenter with one big regret: never getting to interview my hero, the legendary British musician Paul Weller. This podcast exists purely to solve that issue. Welcome to Desperately Seeking Paul. And in this episode of the podcast, I'm joined by the mind-blowingly brilliant musician and singer-songwriter Sam Brown. We dive into her amazing career, those incredible albums and singles from her solo back catalogue. We chat about a band I loved called Homespun, plus singing with the likes of Jools Paul, Pink Floyd, George Harrison, Tom Jones, and connections to Mr. Weller through live music and the Studio 150 album that features Sam's fabulous singing on as well. So let's get into it. My guest, Sam Brown. Thanks for joining me.
Lovely to be here, Dan.
I said to you a moment ago, I'm like a child in a sweet shop. I'm so excited about chatting with you because you were one of the people who are on my list from day one, just because I wanted to chat to you, not even to anything to do with Paul Weller. But I was like, I've got to talk to Sam Brown. She's fabulous.
What made you start
this podcast? Well, I think lockdown, really. It was something that I was kind of thinking about and talking about for so long, about doing a podcast around Paul Weller. And you always need like a creative hook, don't you? You always need an idea. And you'll know this more than anybody. You know, writing songs is a similar thing, right? And I came up with the idea of the fact that I never got to interview him during my radio career, and then lockdown happened, and it's like, well, what am I going to do? It's either spend more time with the kids or find something else to do. So started the podcast.
Yeah, to be fair, I think we all needed a sort of creative something to do in lockdown, didn't we?
Yeah, not least Mr. Weller, who wrote a whole album and an extra album in lockdown for us, which came out as well. Hey, let's kick off. As this is the Paul Weller fan podcast, we'll weave in some of these stories along the way, but we should find out when you first discovered the music of Paul Weller.
Well, I think probably like many people with the Jam as a teenager. And it was an interesting time for me because I've started writing when I was 12, 13. So I was writing stuff and listening to Ricky Lee Jones and Randy Newman and Aretha, Stevie Wonder, you know, quite sort of muso type things. And my friends were like The Clash, you know, The Damned. And I was a punk, but I couldn't bloody stand the music. And I was like, my best mate is like, she's very cool, my friend Lou, and she loved it all, and she'd go to gigs and she was totally into the whole thing. And I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to any gigs, mate. Like, you know,
what do you do as a punk who doesn't go to gigs then?
Well, you spike your hair up and use green food colouring in it and things like that, you know, wear bin bags. I think that was the thing. But anyway, what I was going to say is I think the Jam were, to me, one of the first acts of that era that I just loved. It was very musical. It had a real vibe about it and I really loved it. And, you know, just because I listened to all the singer-songwritery stuff doesn't mean I didn't like other types of music. I just loved it. It had such a great energy and a great sound to it.
Now, you couldn't really escape the music world, given your family, could you? That was always going to be the world that you entered into with your dad and your mum and their music careers and stuff. So it was a really young age. But there's a lovely link that Paul Weller would really appreciate, I think, if I've got this right. Because am I right in thinking your first audio recording was with the Small Faces?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. So it would have been I think it was probably 1976 that we recorded it, maybe earlier. But I think I was 12 or 13. It came out a bit late. I think it came out in 77. But I remember going to the studio with my mum because the thing was I'd known Steve for a long time. My mum and dad knew him, and he lived near us in Essex in a place called Bumblebee Cottage with Pam, who's from South, and she used to talk about her bodacious tatas and Pam, and you know, so there's Pam and Steve. And I remember going to parties with my mum and dad in London and people passing me a joint. I'm going, yeah, no thanks, I'm like 11, mate. You know, sort of. But Steve actually used to come and stay with us a lot. I think basically his lifestyle was properly rock and roll, and I think my mum and dad were, even though they were very into the music business and music, they were also quite sort of working class, family orientated in a way. Not so much that they'd actually spend time with their children, I hasten to add. However, their setup was that of a family home. We had meals, proper meals at a table, and there weren't sort of drunk and drugged up people everywhere. It was quite a straightforward family home in a way. And so I think Steve probably appreciated that. And he used to come and stay with us, perhaps to clean up a little, maybe. And he'd come round and he'd have bacon and eggs and he'd stay for a few days and then off he'd go again to his studio, you know. So I met him then, and he actually was really great with me. and he took time and we talked, and quite often he'd be there when my mum and dad weren't, and we'd chat, which was really lovely. And he was a great cook. He used to, his speciality was tagliatelle carbonara, and he used to make that, which in the 70s, and properly as well. It was really nice.
Yeah, pretty exotic back then. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and then I went on to do my first gigs with him. I was a backing vocalist, but I used to sing the Ann Peebles song, I Can't Stand the Rain. I remember doing it at the Bridge House in Canning Town with him. So yeah, big history with Steve Marriott. And then, of course, my dad married Manon, and so Molly is my stepsister. So
and I only discovered the Small Faces link recently around, because this was them like reuniting, coming back, and then doing one last studio album, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
So if people want to try and dig it out, it's the album 78 in the Shade, and it's the original lineup reunited in the 70s, which is
exactly
wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, I first discovered your music, like a lot of people, would have been the huge smash hit "Stop" in the tail end of the 80s, which I imagine changed your life beyond recognition in terms of that kind of fame and the attention. Was that something you liked at the time, or was it like, actually, this is all a bit terrifying? It
was a fantastic experience. But an experience that had very little to actually do with music. So music for me was, I started writing on my own at home because my parents were away most of the time, to be fair. And I just sit at the piano, and I loved doing it. And interestingly, you said earlier about I wasn't able to escape the music world. But the fact is that music allowed me to escape the world. And I think that is still what I love about it, is music takes you to a completely different place, whatever you're doing. So, but basically, I'd been working and writing songs for a good few years when I signed my record deal. So I signed my record deal in 1985. I'd already bought my own flat. So I didn't really have any aspirations to be famous. As far as I could see, it was just awful. However, as a songwriter, that was the road. The road was to get a record deal and make an album. And I would have been a fool if I hadn't thought that wouldn't involve reams of promotion and photo sessions. And I did it solidly for 3 years with Stop. And I learned a lot from it. I learned that in order to get your music out there at whatever level, you have to let people know it's there. It wasn't great initially because, I wasn't a person to put makeup on every day, and I wasn't a person to maintain a kind of image, if you like. So I got there and they were like, "Oh God, look at you. What are we going to do with you?" It's kind of that kind of thing, "Oh God, you can't wear that, love." So it was a bit like that. And so I kind of was slightly dragged into it a bit. So I don't think I really ever looked the part because I really couldn't be asked. It was about the music for me. But I just learned so much. I learned a lot about presenting yourself. I learned a lot about, although you'll say, "Yeah, I don't think so," because I'm waffling on like mad now. But I did learn how to communicate with people and communicate with, like this is a road into a bigger world for me, isn't it? There'll be people listening. Hello, who don't know me and haven't spoken to me. And so this is an opportunity for me to present myself as I am, I suppose. Yeah. But of course, you can't present the you that's in the pub getting pissed and swearing like mad. You've got to present the you that's kind of makes music and try and find a little bit of a, common ground with people. So I learned that, and I think that was valuable. I think that was really valuable. They're all people, journalists are people, photographers are people, television presenters are people. I don't have an awful lot of respect for the making yourself look right and saying the right things. I don't police myself. Try not to swear because I know some people don't like it, but sometimes a fuck will slip out. It was interesting. I couldn't wait to get back to actually playing music at the end of the big promotional thing with Stop. But I suppose the biggest thing that I took away from it is a part of doing music. It's a part of the whole thing. And as I've got older, I've realized that, you need to market yourself. You need to know who you are. You need to know what you want to wear. You need to know how you want to sound. You need to know what genre you fit into. And those are things that most musicians and songwriters go, "Well, I don't fit into anything. You can't pigeonhole me," which is what I was like. But actually it's good to, because then when people are looking for music, they can find you, Because
you do see some of the new artists coming through and you feel like they've got their shit together on. People like Billie Eilish immediately starting to speak to mind for me. You're like, knows exactly what she wants to be doing. Yeah. It's got that vision and she's doing it her way, you feel.
Very much a different world for women though, I have to say, Dan. I mean, that was not available to me. getting a record deal was probably the best I could hope for. And being told to wear a short skirt to go and visit the BBC radio producers, that was, it was like that. It was a very misogynist world. So, which I don't think it is now. Well, if the bits that are, I think young women are, I mean, my daughter's 27. I would not mess with her. I would not mess with her. And she's the sweetest, most beautiful looking thing. You just wouldn't think it, but she'll just turn around and say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. I want to do it like this. And I love that about the world now.
Well, we should talk about this powerhouse of a voice that was there presumably from a very young age, because it's not just the songs are wonderful, the lyrics, and we'll talk about that in a sec too. But man alive, where did that voice come from? Was that there from as far back as you can remember?
I just have no idea. I mean, my mum was a fantastic singer, and my dad would disagree, but he's actually a really good singer because he thinks, he uses his voice very well. Unfortunately, he's having slight problems with it at the moment, but both of them are great. The volume, I don't know. I have no idea where it came from. I think maybe just because I sang from very early on and I learned to sing. I think I learned to sing by singing along to records. So all the people I mentioned before, I would sing along to those records. I would get the phrasing exactly. And that includes a really diverse range of people. So Kate Bush is very different to Randy Newman, is very different to Aretha Franklin, is very different to Quincy Jones. So they're all, and I would sing along, and I had a record player in my room, which Steve Marriott gave me, funnily enough, in my bedroom. And I would just sing along. And I don't know, anyone else do this? I suspect, yes, read the lyrics and sing along and look at the artwork. And that's how I learned to sing.
Yeah, I didn't sound anything like you when I did that, I have to be honest with you. I would encourage people to really dig into your back catalogue. And there's a lovely, unique thing that came about, which I know you were completely unaware of as well. But the album Stop, April Moon, 43 minutes, box reboot of the moment. Wow. When did somebody point out to you that actually the first initial of the album spells out Sam Brown? Well, what would do if we continue? Yeah.
I actually can't remember. I can't even remember when it was, but I know that the album that I was on was an O. So it would have been around the reboot time. So, but yeah, I had absolutely no idea. I mean, strictly speaking, I suppose it's not true because you got 43 minutes, but that, it's fascinating.
It's brilliant. That's
fascinating. I'm on the N now. I've got to the N.
Yes. So Wednesday, the something of April is the live LP, which was released during lockdown. That was something you've been beaming away on, and there's more to come. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. We recorded the album in 2004, and that's actually about how long it takes me to get around to things. So,
Okay, so we look forward to the next one in another, when's that?
Yeah, 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I've written the next one, and I have entailed the use of Melodyne, which, if you don't know what it is, it's a fabulous auto-tune program, because I can't sing very little now. I can sing a bit, but I certainly can't sing like I used to. So it'll be very different. But I've written it's an electronica album.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure what it's going to be called yet. Not like it was, probably, or...
Oh, wow. I'm really excited about new stuff. Is really... Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. Because the first time I saw you live, and I imagine quite a few people would have experienced this too, would have been with Jools Holland, the Rhythm and Blues Big Band Orchestra. Yeah. It was always a real highlight. Those gigs were always incredible. It was like a proper party that you were going to. When you'd pop up and do your bits like Valentine Moon, wow. I mean, God, they were so special. And the same for when you were on Jules TV and Hootenanny and things like that. Working with him must have been really special.
As I said before, I say what I feel. I'm not lying, and this is in no way a PR exercise, but Jules absolutely changed my life. He's a really good friend, and I started working with him. Gosh, it was do you remember a thing called The Happening? It was a similar thing to Later, but it was a predecessor to it. And they did a pilot, which is something that I did. It must have been around 92, because it was quite shortly after my mum had died, I think. And, but it was the first time I'd actually worked on the road with people who saw me as a woman. I know that sounds a bit mad, but up till then I'd always worked with my brothers and with blokes. And I had no concept of myself as a sensual female being. And all of a sudden there's all these blokes who just love me to bits, and Jules, we get on really well, and we have very similar tastes in art and, the retro stuff and all that kind of thing. And what it did was it really enriched that side of my life, to sort of, if you like, for want of a better word, the arty side of my life, the artistic side of my life, not in music, but in the way you are, in the things you like, the things you do. And I realized that I had built this world around me with all these bits and pieces, mostly sort of retro stuff. So I've always liked 40s and 50s stuff, but I'd never really attached it to anything, to a way of thinking, or I'd never really given it much thought. But with Jules, he has such a hunger for art and creativity and culture, and all these little pieces of a jigsaw sort of fell into place. And he'd reference films, and I'd never seen Jean Cocteau films before. And I loved watching old mad French films, and I'd go to La Scala in King's Cross, and I liked all the old films and everything, but I didn't really know much about them. Put it this way, our newspapers at our home were the Sun, the Beano and the Dandy. So that gives you a clue as to how interested my dad was in the outside world, which was not at all. He had his work. That's what he did. So for me, all of a sudden, this whole world opened up. And I think for him, he kind of found someone who sang in a way that kind of fitted the bill. But I was kind of wearing these 1950s going, oh, I love that. Where'd you get that? And I saw this and blah, blah, blah. So we just got on really well, and it changed my life, and it gave me a huge amount of confidence in who I was, So it was sort of the beginning of a massive part of my life. Really important to me.
I'm guessing that it was Jules Holland and that show maybe that was your first connection with Paul Weller, because he was always on that show. I mean, we had Dave Swift was on the podcast a few weeks back and talking about the Weller connections there as well. But would it have been through that you first met Paul?
Oh, gosh. Now you're asking. I was thinking of this because I kind of knew you'd ask. And the truth is, I can't remember when I first met him. But I know that one of the first times I met him was, on a Jules gig. And it was at the Shepherd's Bush Empire. And Eddie Reader was on the gig, and it must have been a Christmassy thing because she had the most incredible outfit on, which was a sort of a negligee with fairy lights sewn into it underneath. So she kind of started up her battery pack and boom, she was like a Christmas tree. And she's just such a fantastic person. So she was there. And I remember going down to sound check, eating a pear. Paul looked across at me and said, "Nice pear." And off he went. And I think they were the first words he ever said to me. And I suspect, that was one of the first times I met him. And then after I'd finished, I think it did Nighttime is the Right Time that night. I can't remember who I sang it with. I can't remember who else was on the gig. It was one of those big things where there are loads of artists involved. But so that was probably the first time I met him. And don't ask me what year, because I have absolutely no idea whatsoever.
And there was the first time you played with him would have been the Ronnie Lane tribute night, I'm guessing. Would that be right?
Actually, no, not at all. No, because of course, through Jules, we recorded Will It Go Round in Circles. So I did all the backing vocals on that with, I can't remember who else did it. Louise, maybe. I can't remember. So so we did the BVs for him on that and a couple of other things. So I met him on a few Jules gigs. It's also possible I met him on other charity gigs, but I used to do a lot of charity gigs, so I can't remember. They had a big super group, and I did the backing vocals on a lot of those, so I might have met him then. But that I do remember that gig, and that is when we kind of first clocked each other, I think. Yeah.
And the two of you, I mean, properly like duetting on a song I hadn't heard of before, actually, Spiritual Babe, which I think is only on like a live LP of Ronnie Lane's, right? So Paul plays the poacher as well on that gig, which was just brilliant. And there's you and he, and then Ronnie Wood comes along. You're singing Ooh La La at the end as well.
Oh, it was a lovely gig.
Brilliant. What can you remember about that night?
I remember being introduced. They cut a song out and hearing it over the tannoy backstage whilst having a wee. And I can tell you that it's a long way from the toilets to the stage. And I think they announced me and I just wasn't there because I was having a wee. Yeah. And I also remember that I wished somebody had said to me, you should wear a bra with that top. They're the two things I remember really well about that gig. Apart from obviously duetting with Paul Weller, and was Pete Townsend on that gig? I think he might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was an amazing gig. And I did some Charlie Hart, I know I used to work with Chris Jagger, so I know him through that. But no, it was just lovely, really lovely. The
videos are on YouTube, although not high definition, but worth watching. But there's a bit where Paul and Ronnie are kind of round one microphone and you're on the other for the Ooh La La song. A couple of can-can dancers pop up because I think it's referenced in the lyrics, the can-can, which is a bit random on the side of the stage.
I didn't even notice that.
Which is a bit strange, but it really looks like like Paul and Ronnie Wood are like completely in love with each other, and you're not getting a look in at all. It's really funny.
I'm sure they are. I mean, they probably know each other a lot better than I know either of them, to be fair. Yeah, no, it was a lovely gig. It was a really lovely gig. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really good.
Worth digging out, and I'll share that in the show notes of the podcast. I'm going to fast forward to an album that was released in 2004, Studio 150. So this was Paul's covers album, and he really dug out some really interesting songs like Close to You and Early Morning Rain and his version of Wishing on a Star. You're on the final 2 tracks on the album, All Along the Watchtower, which was the Dylan song, Hendrix most famously done probably, and Birds, the Neil Young song. Did you get to go to Studio 150? Did you get to go to Amsterdam with the guys?
No.
Oh.
I don't think so. Do you know? I can't remember. It's really terrible. I can't remember where it was. I remember the session because Carleen Anderson was on it, and she's just such an amazing... It is Carleen Anderson, isn't it?
Yeah, it was Carleen. Yeah. And Claudia Fontaine as well.
Claudia, who very sadly died. Yeah. So I really remember the session well, and I loved, I mean, the music was fantastic. The tracks were great, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't actually remember where it was. I know that's really bad, but I can't remember.
No, not at all. I've heard, I think the sessions in Amsterdam are pretty messy. So if you avoided that, that's probably a good thing. But
I can imagine. I'd like to point out to your listeners at this point, Dan, that I can't remember because there was a lot going on, not because of anything else. I mean, I like a drink, but I've never smoked or taken any drugs or anything. But it wasn't like this kind of like everyone's rolling around out of it. Well, I don't know about studio thingy, but this session wasn't. It was
you
down
were just
to
busy
work.
with about 12 different careers rotating around.
Something like that. Yeah.
I mean, those are 2 very special songs, aren't they? Anyway. But,
they're fantastic.
Do you remember anything about what kind of Paul, any direction or anything he had in his head, how far the songs were along when you became involved?
Recording is just the most amazing. I love recording, and Paul obviously has done a lot of it, and he knew exactly what he wanted, and he knew the sound he wanted, and he booked the right people to get the sound that he wanted. So it went very well, and I think there would have been a couple of bits of, direction. This is what I want, and that's it. It's as simple as that, really. And I think quite often when you get the right people doing your sessions, it just kind of comes together. Some things don't work, some things do, but no, it was. I think he knew what sound he wanted, and we were it. If you know what I mean.
It would take me the whole of this podcast to list the people that you've worked with. Some amazing people, from Dexys and Stand Up Ballet to Tina Turner to Gary Moore, Chris Farlow, Tom Jones, George Harrison, Pink Floyd, and you played Nebworth with Pink Floyd.
David Gilmour asked me to do the Momentary Lapse of Reason tour, I think it was. So basically I turned them down 3 times before I actually got to tour with them. Dave was really brilliant when I was younger, really encouraged me, and he was very kind, and he gave me a couple of days studio time and kind of came in, and so he was great. He was very kind. What was the question?
I'm not sure. I'm not even sure I asked the question. I can't remember that. But how does Paul differ to some of those? I mean, proper icons of music. People like Tina Turner, for Christ's sake. I mean, these are proper stars, aren't they?
Paul is. And socially as well, when I've met him socially, because I haven't met him socially a lot, but he's a quiet person. He's quiet and he knows what he wants, and he doesn't really say anything unless he means it. As far as I can tell, that's the sort of person he seems. And that is always a great person to work with. Very easy, but you want people to know what they want. And if people know what they want, it goes very well. And it's easy. But equally, I do remember there was some creativity, i.e. the harmonies. And you might say, it might be good if we put an octave on at that point, quite a high octave sort of thing. And you go, yeah, or no, I don't think it needs it. He was great to work with, really good to work with, very quiet and unassuming.
And what is it about because I mean, your dad's a great connection in terms of longevity. When you talk about this kind of drive to just want to continue making music in yourself as well. But Paul, here we are in another number 1 album in his 6th decade of number 1 albums, I think it is.
Wow. I think if you been out of the music world for some time now, well, since 2007, I've just recently started writing again and recording again. I've had the opportunity has presented itself for me to compare the 2 worlds. And I always knew I was very lucky, but I don't think I realized how lucky I was, because yes, I think I was a good singer and I'm a good writer, but the feeling that you get from being able to actually just being driven to, if you like, to pursue that, when I started working. I moved into London when I was 17. I had 2 jobs. I was a cleaner and I did waitressing and I did sessions when they came up. And I worked really hard and I loved it, you know, because I could sing and because singing with people and doing all these different things is the most amazing thing to do. And I don't think that money drives people. I think that experience drives people, and the joy of being able to have an idea and make it into a song, and then making that song like an artist makes a picture, you know, and putting all the different colors in and the depth and the feel of it. Is it going to be very delicate? Is it going to like really make people feel it in their gut? You know, what's it going to be? And I think that is what drives people. I think people are driven because it's an incredible thing to do. I should add, in this world where, you know, we're having sort of art in all its forms ripped away from us in schools and what have you, I think it's up there. I think music it's an art form and we need it. Humans need it. We'll just turn into these kind of, you know, blank automatons if we don't have that stuff in our lives.
Well, and what would we have done in lockdown over the past kind of 18 months?
Oh, God.
Without music, right? I mean...
Yeah, and how many shit homemade albums are going to be coming out in the next 6 months?
Mine is on the way.
Yeah, mine too.
I've got no talent whatsoever, but at least you have. Homespun is something I wanted to talk to you about because I saw you live in a little village hall in Cranley in Surrey back in the day. And this was David Rotheray, who was on a break from the beautiful South at the time. I think they'd taken like some time off. So he's away from touring, recording, and starts writing these songs, but works with you in terms of bringing them to life. And this band's formed, Homespun, which there are 3 albums which I have to tell you guys, honestly, you have to dig into these albums. Homespun, Effortless, Cool, and Short Stories from East Yorkshire. And these songs that are, in the same way as Beautiful South, have these kind of quirky, intelligent, clever, funny, witty lyrics. A lot of the Homespun stuff is like very much the same. Things like, you know, a song called If We're So Happy, but when you dig into it, it's If We're So Happy, Why Are We Drinking So Much? Just a brilliant, brilliant project. I loved it. That must have been such fun to work on.
It was brilliant. So trumpeter and keyboard player called Tony Robinson. Oh, well, he didn't introduce me to Dave. I think he suggested me to Dave Rotheray. And it's interesting, isn't it? When people think of the beautiful South, they think of Paul Heaton, which is fine. And he's a very talented chap and a great singer. But David Rotheray writes the most beautiful songs. He's fantastic. And he, it was really, I just went in as a singer, to be fair, Dan. But the songs, he knew what he wanted. And it was very... You know, I think at that point I'd been singing with Jules and everything was loud. And that's how people see me. They see me with this big voice, but so much of what I do isn't loud. And so I didn't really want to do it if it was going to be a load of shouting again. I love shouting, you know, and so all that happened was Dave phoned me up and he's a very gentle man, very funny, likes a pint. And I got on the train, I went up to Hull. And we had a day in the studio. It didn't take more than 2 days to do the whole album, I don't think.
Wow.
I can't remember if I went once and then went back, or if I went once and we decided it worked and then went back again. I can't remember. But basically, I went up to sing a few songs. And it was just lovely, lovely, lovely people. Very unshowbiz, which I like. And we just had a laugh and sang songs. He sang them to me, played me the melody. I sang them, and that was that. It was as easy as that. And then we went off on tour, and that was fun, and everyone was nice, and we had a drink, and you know, it's a lovely, lovely thing to do. And as you say, great albums because they're great songs, basically.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful sound. I really love that stuff.
I think my favorite is the one that goes Because We Were Young.
Yeah.
Because we were young. Unfortunately young. Yeah. Oh, so Love Will Come Around. You Are Here. My Sorrows Learn to Swim. Just a lovely, lovely sound and lovely projects. And it was during that time and I hope you don't mind me asking about your voice because you mentioned earlier on, but was that gearing up for the next tour of that where you were having problems with your voice? Yeah. So the problem started in the middle of 2006. And I remember doing a corporate gig in London, right next to Tower Bridge it was. And I went to hit a note and it just kind of came in underneath the note, which is unusual for me. And I was having to push it up. And then I noticed over the next few gigs, it was the same. I was also in the middle of a divorce and about to have a nervous breakdown or in the middle of or start whatever.
Right.
So it wasn't a great time for me, and it just got worse. It's got worse and worse. And what I did was I left Jules and I booked in to do a tour with my dad because I knew it would be a very different kind of singing. So I did that, and it got worse through that. And so at the beginning of 2007, I was supposed to go on tour with Homespun, and we did a couple of dates, and it was apparent that there was no way I could do it. So we had to cancel it. And that was that. And I then went on to have an operation, to remove some polyps, later on in the year in 2007. And then I put a tour in of my own, my one woman show, did a couple of dates, couldn't do it, had to cancel it. So that's how long the issues have lasted. And I don't know what it is. People, obviously, you know how it is when there's something wrong, people want to fix it for you. But it's not nodules. It's not polyps. I did a lot of, with Stop and with Pink Floyd, I hadn't done any voice training, and I can really hear that. But after 1995, I was really disciplined about voice training, really disciplined, and I loved it. And it enabled my voice to really come into its own, so I loved it. So there was no reason for me not to do it. So yeah, I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is. I think it might be partly hormonal. It might be partly psychological. I don't know. I don't know how you fix psychological, because of course it's all very well saying it's all in your mind, but you can't go, oh, okay, it's all in my mind. Oh, I'll just sing then, shall I?
And so much of the delivery of your songs is in confidence as well, isn't it? Because you have to,
yeah, absolutely.
You have to know that you're going to hit those incredible notes,
Yeah.
Wow.
So the new stuff is, if I'm in a low register, I can make it work, but I do have to so it's random as well. So it's not like one way all the time. It changes. Some days it's better than others. So I might do something and people say, well, you could do that. You could do that on a gig. I'm like, yeah, but I can't, because I can't rely on it, So I've accepted it. It's been a long time now, 14 years. But of course it's led me into the wonderful world of ukulele.
I was going to get onto this. So there's a lovely little EP that I've got, which is a thing called Ukulele and Voice, which was just you and 5 songs. It was just really stripped back, but literally your voice and your ukulele. Really simple, and recorded at your dad's house, I think. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my dad's old house, yeah.
And it's brilliant. But that then gives us a hint of what's to come with the International Ukulele Club of Sonning Common, which was the original, right? So,
I can see you reading that, Dan.
I wrote it down because I know I'm going to cock that up otherwise. But this was just you in your front room teaching some mates how to play ukulele that then just exploded into this huge thing.
Well, I know. Well, the name was a joke, because there were like 7 people and it was like, this is never going to go anywhere, But we had a gig, so it had to have a name. Drunk in the kitchen one night, that was what we came up with, and I've regretted it ever since. Although I haven't regretted it, because the people in that club are now my dear friends, and we've had a lot of fun together. I know I'm reasonably good at the ukulele, but I'm not brilliant at it. I think I've just got a good sort of all-round feel for music, so it kind of works. And I think the people who come to me don't just learn about ukulele. They get filthy stories, they get nights out on the piss, they get, so that we have a lot of fun. But there's a lot of clubs now. I mean, through lockdown, I've taught 8 clubs every week through the whole year, online, obviously,
Wow.
I love it. And the Ukulele and Voice EP, actually, I'm really proud of, because I think to me, when I listen to that now, I can really hear that my voice is really good. The singing is really good on it. And I'd reached a point where, I was so happy. Singing was just an absolute joy. Because before I did voice training, for all you would-be singers out there, it was always a stress. It was a worry. Is my voice going to last? am I going to lose my voice? Am I going to get that note? But when you do voice training and you do it properly, the world is your lobster, as they say.
Now, we kick this off with this love of the jam and you as a punk. And I don't think the punk's ever gone away from what I can work out, really. It's as much as well as a mod as well. It's like it's within you. It's part of your DNA, I think. What have you made of Paul's career since those jam days? Well,
I think he has made a genre from perhaps the 60s and 70s. He's really made it his own and tailored it to himself. He's a fantastically talented person. He really is. And he's got such a great feel. And I think that is for me, if I'm talking about Paul Weller, the defining thing about him as a musical person is his feel, is the ability to pick up a guitar and lay down a feel. And that is it. And all the great people, Steve Marriott, Pete Townsend, David Gilmour, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck. It's not just about what they're playing technically. It's about it being concrete. They make music tangible. They make it solid and they make you feel it. So if you're in a room with someone like that and they play you a song, you're totally there with them, aren't you? That, for me, I don't know what you would call that. I don't think it's charisma. I think it's a natural musicality that not everyone has. And I think he's got that and he has explored it in every way he can. And that's what artists do, isn't it? And, they use the gift that they have and they do everything they possibly can with it. And I have absolute respect and admiration for that.
Hey, look, I thank you so much for your time. I have 2 final questions before you go, Sam, if that's all right. You're allowed one Paul Weller song for the rest of your life. It can be The Jam, The Style Council, or solo. Which one are you going to go with?
Okay, going underground.
Why that one?
It takes me back to being 15, 16 and, black leather coats and big old things from a charity shop. And it's just a time in my life. But equally, I love Paul. Will It Go Round in Circles? I just love. I think it's a great rock soul track. Brilliant.
Final question. The purpose of this podcast is not least to talk to brilliant people like yourself, but it's also to get that interview with Paul Weller that I never managed during my radio career. If it happens, what should I ask him? Is there anything you'd like to know or anything you think I should talk to him about?
Oh, that's a good question. Have you not had an interview with him yet?
No, not yet. No.
Well, I think the question is, why haven't you done an interview with me yet, Paul? I think that's actually a really good question because a lot of interviews, people fall back on kind of stuff that's been done before. So I think you want to find out, maybe what it is a question like, what made you start playing music? But, that'll be a question he's asked a lot. So can you find the way of saying it that actually finds that moment? Do you understand what I mean?
I totally understand what you mean. Yeah. It's about getting something unique out of the conversation.
Yeah. I don't know what it would be, but I'm sure you've asked some lovely questions today and you've made me remember things that I'd completely forgotten about. So I'm absolutely sure, that you'll find something. Maybe what about, did he meet Steve Marriott? Did he ever meet him?
Yeah, I don't know the answers to that. You're right. I've no idea.
Yeah, because Steve Marriott was a big influence on him, isn't he?
Hey, Sam, this has been so lovely. I've loved every second of it. Thank you.
I have as well. And thank you.
Oh, bless you. Well, thank you for letting me gate crash your home studio stroke lad's room at the moment.
Yeah, and good luck with the kids in the summer holidays.
Oh, bless you. We need it.
Yeah, I think you probably do, actually. I think everyone does.
And I cannot wait to hear the new material. We don't have an idea in terms of when it's going to arrive, but when it does, it'll be a lovely surprise.
Yeah, it'll be soon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was brilliant. My thanks once again to Sam Brown. What an honour to spend time in her company. You can find out more on her website, misssambrown.com, and dig into my show notes for links to some of the songs and videos that we talked about. And wow, what an exclusive. A new album on the way as well. Next up on the podcast, a man who played live with the Style Council and live and on record with Paul Weller solo, the saxophonist and flute player Jack O'Peak. We hear about those early days of the Paul Weller solo career, the movement, Wildwood, and lots of touch points since then too, and that fantastic return to the band last summer. Make sure you subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review. It really does help us to find new listeners. And please do share on your social media channels. Hey, you can even buy me a coffee as well. Find all the information about my guests in the show notes. Get in touch on Twitter @WellerFanPod or on Instagram and Facebook. It's Paul Weller Fan Podcast. I'll see you next time.